production if they invest. Okay. So private firms will reduce their production if they invest lot of on the advertisement so that uh, they will earn more profit. Then finding of other studies. So you proposed your hypothesis, like when you proposed your synopsis, you must have done the review of literature related to your subject, and you might have come across different aspects or different experiments that have already been done by different researchers. So these are the findings of other studies, and while you read, you have understood, okay, I have read suppose 100 articles, and this is the lacuna, this is the aspect which has not been studied by any of the researchers. So let us work on this aspect and let us find how this is workable or how this works. So this is the findings from the other studies. This is another source of the hypothesis. Then level knowledge. What is the state of the knowledge in the field, or what is known and what is unknown, is the key source of hypothesis. So the level of knowledge you have understood by doing your review of literature. What is known you have not included in your synopsis, but what is not known, what is unknown, that helped you to formulate your hypothesis. For example, in psychology, there is a theory that states that stress impairs memory. This is the theory, or this is the finding from other study. So maybe I can hypothesize that high stress environments decrease students' test scores. So this is my hypothesis. Then continuity of research. You take one aim, you design the experiment, you collect the data. From that data, you understand what is going on, and then continuously it leads to the formulation of new hypotheses. Say, for example, I am working on some cancer, and my hypothesis says that a specific drug reduces tumor size, but after conducting experiments, I come across that my result do not shows that this particular drug does not reduces the tumor size, right? So I will change my hypothesis again. I will put forth a new hypothesis, and again I will continue with the research. Say maybe at initially, suppose I am working on one drug, and that drug did not show the reduction in the tumor size in significant manner. So maybe I will put forth another hypothesis. Okay, let us incorporate two drugs, and let us see what is happening by adding another drug. So or my hypothesis will be a combination of two drugs reduces tumor size. So I will have the room to incorporate two drugs, three drugs, etc. So this is what is continuous research. Then pre-monetization or intuition or personal insight. Basically, it refers to completely original idea that comes from your mind or your personal insight, or in common word, what we say, what is your gut feeling? What is your gut feeling? And it's a fresh idea that hasn't been explored before. How would you come to know that? By doing review of literature. You come up with your fresh idea. Your fresh idea has not been worked before. So, or we can say it's a virgin idea. So, although virgin idea may bring in unique contributions to the existing knowledge, but it is likely that these ideas may suffer in two major challenges. And what are those? The relationship found in one study, it may not be hold true in other studies. So whatever relationship that I have established, or whatever results that I have got in my study, it is likely that it may not be hold true for other studies. And if there are no existing theories are there to back up your support idea, then you have to do hardship to prove and understand your hypothesis and go ahead with the hypothesis, go ahead with the experiments, and go ahead with the data collection and analysis. Then how will hypothesis helps in the scientific method? It is basically investigator's eye. You always keep an eye on the hypothesis, keep an eye on the seeking answers to tentatively adapt to the generalization. It leads to focus research, because without hypothesis, the research remain unfocused. It can go off the track. Then by put forthing hypothesis, you are clear with the advancement of the study, you are clear with the specific goals. Then it is acting as a linking. So hypothesis plays an important role in linking the related facts and the information together, and then it organizes them into whole and you can generalize it. It prevents blind research. When you have a concrete clear cut idea, when you have concrete clear cut hypothesis, then you can go accordingly. But if you do not have any hypothesis, you just mingle blindly. You do not know whether I should do this or I should do this or I should do that, and you do not know what is the outcome or what will be the future outcome, whether the experiments will be success or it will be a failure. Then hypothesis acts as a guiding light. Again, it provides a direction. Then it acts as a sensitizer about certain aspects of the situation. That could be irrelevant to the research question. So it is up to you whether to include, incorporate or not. Hypothesis gives clarity to understand the problem and what are the consequences. It acts as a bridge between the problem and the location of empirical evidences, or basically experimental design to solve the problem. Then hypothesis provides a researcher an efficient instrument by exploring and explaining the unknown facts. It provides a fair framework for drawing conclusions, and it opens the door for further research. Then the types of research hypothesis. So based on the criteria, research hypotheses are of various types and several distinct criterias are under. So first is number of dependent and independent variable. How many variables are there in your experimental model? So based on that, you can have simple hypothesis, complex hypothesis. Second criteria, level and nature of outcome assurance criteria. So you have research hypothesis, or it is also called as working hypothesis, logical hypothesis. Third, basis of either population or sample criteria, whether you are working on a population or a sample. So you have a statistical hypothesis. Then the direction of association or relationship between the variable. So a hypothesis could be directional or not. Causal and correlation criteria, associative hypothesis or causal hypothesis, theory development criteria, inductive hypothesis, deductive hypothesis, from simple to generalized or from specific to generalized or from generalized to specific. Then statistical significance criteria. Now this is what is we work mostly on. Seventh, null hypothesis and alternate hypothesis. Then relation to other function criteria, descriptive hypothesis, relation hypothesis, and very quickly we will go through the description of that. The simple hypothesis. So basically it shows relationship between one independent variable and the other dependent variable. So independent variable is called as the cause, whereas dependent variable is called as the effect. And this simple hypothesis is straightforward. It is focusing on just two variables. For example, eating more junk food causes weight gain, right? So here the junk food is an independent variable and weight gain is a dependent variable. So more you eat junk food, it is likely that you will gain more weight. So there are only two variables are involved, and you are talking about only two variables. You are talking about the relationship between only two variables, one being dependent and the other being independent. Then complex hypothesis is basically speaks about the relationship between two or more independent variables. There are many variables are associated. Out of that, one is dependent variable and certain rest of the variables are independent variables. Say eating more carbohydrates and fat causes obesity with other problems such as blood pressures, heart diseases, etc. So here eating more carbohydrates and fats, they are independent variables, whereas obesity, high blood pressure, heart diseases, etc., they are dependent variables. So this hypothesis involves multiple causes leading to several effects. Then research hypothesis, or it is also called as empirical or working hypothesis. So this hypothesis is basically postulated when you plan or when you begin to study, and it may not always be fully specific at the beginning. As your work progresses, this hypothesis may tend to change, but of course it serves as a prediction that guides the investigation. For example, uh, suppose there is a vehicle. The vehicle gives a particular average, or it consumes a certain amount of fuel. So I can put forth a hypothesis like a vehicle will consume the same amount of fuel in liters even if the prices of the fuel increases. So here in this hypothesis, it predicts a certain outcome. What is that outcome? Fuel consumption, regardless of changes in the fuel prices. Or another hypothesis, daily brushing of teeth will reduce teeth related problems. So what does it predict? It predicts that regular brushing will lead to the fewer dental issues and guiding a study on the dental health practices. Then next is logical hypothesis. It is based on the reasoning or deduction. rather than actual evidence. It represents a logical explanation of something, why this is happening logically, but it hasn't been tested or proven with the real data. The logical hypothesis, it is not necessary that it has been proved or it has been tested, but it gives the reasoning or deduction based on the logical explanation. For example, suppose there is an alien which is raised on the Saturn, and that alien, if it comes to the Earth, he would have a breathing problem on the Earth. You cannot test, but based on the logic, you can deduce it. Or alligators have green scales, and therefore the dinosaurs are closely related to them because most dinosaurs had green scales. Well, you can see alligators in present world, but you cannot see dinosaurs. So you cannot test it, but you can logically prove it. You can logically deduce it. Then you have statistical hypothesis. It involves the quantifiable variables. That means you can measure and use numbers to confirm whether the hypothesis is true or false. And basically, we test the hypothesis at probability less than 0.05 or sometimes 0.05 or 0.01. So basically, it takes into account a particular number. So example, mean weight of tomato is 76 gram. You can test it. You can take one tomato, weigh it, another tomato, weigh it, and do the averaging and find out whether the really mean weight of tomato is 76 gram. But here you are not talking about any particular variety. Or you can put forth a hypothesis that mean weight of Crede tomato or Dania tomato or any other variety tomato is 76 grams. Or variance in batch 1 is different than variance in batch 2. So whether there any statistical significant or significant difference occurs between them or not, that you can prove statistically. So here you prove or disprove the null hypothesis. If you reject the null hypothesis, you accept the alternate hypothesis. Then directional hypothesis. So basically it is based on the theory and predictions. Not only that, the relationship exists between two variables, but what is the direction of the variable? Such as is it greater, smaller, less, more, decreases, increases. So you are talking about the direction. Say for example, music theory decreases depression, or music therapy helps you to improve mood, or eating more fibers helps reduce weight. So here decreasing, reduce, or exposing plants to more sunlight can promote, that means increases their growth and the development. So this is what is directional hypothesis. Non-directional hypothesis, as the name suggests, it does not predict the direction or what is the relationship between the variables. Say for example, there is a difference between exam score between those who revise a lot and those who do not. It is not considering, it is not speaking about the direction, whether the scores will increase or decrease, but there will be a difference. Or the experimental group and the control group will achieve different systolic blood pressure reduction. How much different? Increase or decrease, greater, smaller, etc. So this is what is non-directional hypothesis. Associative hypothesis. It states that a change in one variable result in the change in other variable. As the one variable changes, accordingly the other variable also changes. Say for example, a strong relation exists between weather condition and level of mango production. Suppose it remains casted for a longer time, the humidity is high, there is no sunlight, etc. So it is likely that the mangoes will catch the pathogen and overall production will decrease. Or there is a positive association between physical activity levels and overall health. The more physical activity you do, your overall health will improve. So as one variable changes, the other variable also changes accordingly. And this is what we take into account in the correlation. So it could be positive correlation, negative correlation, or there could not be any relation. Then causal hypothesis. It talks about the cause and effect between the variables. So it talks about the prediction about one variable can cause particular outcome or the event. For example, inhaling chalk dust, which is a cause, causes asthma, that is effect. Or smoking is a cause, which causes the lung cancer. Direct smoking or passive smoking or active smoking, both causes the possibility of lung cancer. And it is postulated or it's stated that passive smoking is more dangerous. Then inductive hypothesis. This hypothesis is developed by observing specific instances and then making a generalized conclusion based on those observations. For example, this monsoon, suppose I will probably see house flies in my backyard. Okay, this is a common experience to us. In the monsoon, there is a increased number of house flies. So this is a inductive hypothesis. Or maybe every time you eat peanuts, you start to cough because you are allergic to the peanuts. So this is inductive hypothesis. Then deductive hypothesis. This uh, hypothesis basically starts from a generalized statement. Basically, what is the difference between the inductive hypothesis and deductive? Inductive hypothesis works where there is no theory of existence, and it uses what is called bottom up method. So you do the specific observation and then you go for the generalization. So that is what is called bottoms up. From the specific to generalize, that is inductive. And reverse is deductive. From the generalized to the specific. From the generalized to the specific. So this is what is called top down, bottom up and top down. So a very famous example of deductive hypothesis is which is of the Socrates. All males are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. So he is talking about the general. All males are mortal, or human beings are mortal. Socrates is also human being, and therefore Socrates is mortal. So from generalized, he came to the specific. Whereas in inductive, from specific you go for generalized. So in monsoon, I will see house flies in my house as well as your house or any other house. So specific to generalized and from generalized to specific. Then you have null hypothesis. So when there is no empirical or adequate theoretical information, it is denoted by H naught or H0. So there is no significance relationship between A and B. Alternate hypothesis designated as H1 or HA. So there is a significance exists between variable A and variable B, and this is what we use often. Descriptive hypothesis. It provides a description of certain characteristic of variables, and that variable could be anything like income, expenditure, production, work hours, and so on and so forth. Say, for example, rate of growth of agricultural products in certain area, Maybe rate of paddy production in Ahmednagar is less, rate of paddy production in Konkan area is more, or the income level of certain class of people, like those who work on daily wages, they have less income, or those who are working in corporate sector or in educational field, or maybe government jobs, they have maybe high income likewise. Then relational hypothesis, it talks about the relationship between two or more variables. Like families with small income spend more on the necessities, or more the horsepower a car has, the higher its fuel consumption. So horsepower means maybe engine capacity, number of pistons, whether it is V8 engine, V6 engine, V12 engine. So more is the horsepower, maybe more is the weight, more is the fuel consumption, plus quality of the fuel, because you cannot feel ordinary fuel to the racer car. They require a particular feel only, particular octane feel only. So there are number of variables are included, or two variables are included. Okay, so that is all about what I have to talk about.